Before we get to the story, I'd like to say thanks so much for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading cosmic horror related stories every single day. So if that sounds good, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot, especially when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I've driven the same mail route for 4 years, and I know every mile of it the way you know a road you've driven in the dark enough times that your hands know the turns before your eyes do. 60 miles of county road through the kind of northern Minnesota landscape that looks beautiful on a calendar and demanding in person, farmland and tree breaks, and the occasional cluster of mailboxes at the end of a long driveway. The houses set back far enough from the road that you sometimes can't see them from where you stop. 18 delivery points on a good day. I leave my house at 7:30, and I am back by early afternoon depending on the weather and the package load, and I've done it alone every day for 4 years without incident. I need to tell you what alone means on this route because it matters. There are stretches of county road on the back half where I won't see another vehicle for 40 minutes. No intersections, no farmsteads visible from the road. Just the flat and the tree breaks and the sky, which up here in late fall is the color of old pewter from about 8 in the morning until it gets dark. Alone out there is a specific quality of alone that I've always found more restful than unnerving. 4 years of it will do that. You get comfortable with the space. I'm not comfortable with it anymore. The first time I saw it was 3 weeks ago on a Wednesday. The far end of the route, which is the last stretch before I turn around and come back. A long, straight section of road that runs between 2 fields that had been harvested a few weeks prior and were now just flat dark earth on either side. I was coming out of that stretch, already thinking about the drive back, and I glanced in my rearview mirror the way I did every few minutes out of habit. There was a figure on the road behind me, far back, maybe a quarter mile, too far to make out to anything specific. Just the shape of something upright on the road in the mirror, in the middle of the lane, the way a person stands when they're walking a road with no shoulder. I remember thinking it was a farmer crossing between fields or someone out for a walk, both of which happened occasionally on the rural routes, even in late fall. I watched the mirror for another few seconds, and then I was around a slight curve, and the road behind me was empty. I noted it in the loose way you note something that isn't alarming, filed it somewhere shallow and drove the rest of the route, and went home and didn't think about it again until the next morning, when it was there again. Same location, same distance back, same upright shape in the flat grey light, standing in the center of the lane. I slowed down and watched the mirror, and it didn't move. And then I was around the curve again, and it was gone. I pulled over and looked back. The road was empty for as far as I could see, open fields on both sides. Nowhere to go that fast, nothing to step behind. Just the empty road and the sky and the wind moving across the harvested fields. I told myself it was someone who'd turned off between my 2 sightings. I told myself this for about 3 days before I stopped being able to tell myself that. The pattern took about a week to become undeniable. It showed up every day. Same basic shape, same quality of just standing there rather than walking. Same disappearance when I got far enough around the curve to lose the sight line and then stop to look back. But the location changed. Every day it was a little further up the route than the day before. Not a lot, maybe a quarter mile of progress each day, sometimes less, but consistent, measurable, in the specific direction of my starting point. Working its way up the route towards where I began. I started marking it in a notebook I kept in the car, just the location and the approximate distance, because I needed the marks on paper to believe my own account of what I was seeing. By day 8, the figure was appearing in a section of the route that was about 20 miles further toward the start than where I'd first seen it. By day 10, it was at the halfway point. The day I had Orin ride along was day 11. Orin does the route on my days off and has for as long as I've been on it. He's been a carrier for 20 years and he's the least alarmed person I know, which is partly why I asked him and partly why his response bothered me as much as it did. We drove the full 60 miles together, and I watched the rearview mirror at every point where it had appeared, and Orin watched it with me on the back half when I told him where to look. He didn't see anything, not a suggestion of something, not a shape he could talk himself out of. Nothing. He was patient about it and kind about it, and he told me the light did strange things on the flat sections in late fall, that the low angle of it created visual artifacts on straight roads that could read as shapes, and that 4 years of solo driving on a monotonous route could do things to a person's pattern recognition that were worth talking to someone about. He said it the way you say something when you mean it kindly, and he meant it kindly, and I drove him back and thanked him and went home and sat in my kitchen and thought about the notebook and the marks in it. The marks were real. Whatever Orin had or hadn't seen, the marks were a record I'd been keeping before I'd decided what they meant, which made them better evidence than my memory. The figure showed up the next day at the same point it had been at the day before Orin rode with me. Whatever had kept it from appearing while he was in the car hadn't set it back. It had just waited. The Fells are a retired couple who live at one of the stops about 2/3 of the way up the route from the far end. They've been on this route since before I took it over, been in that house for 30 years, and they're the kind of people who notice things about the road outside their property the way people notice things when the road is the main view from their kitchen window and they've been looking at it for decades. On day 14, Lena Fell was at the end of the driveway when I pulled up, which happened sometimes when they had a package they wanted to make sure got in the car rather than the box. She handed it off and then said, in the way she said everything, conversationally and without preamble, that they'd been seeing someone walking the road lately. I asked her what she meant. She said there'd been a figure on the road in the mornings over the past week or so, visible from their kitchen window, walking in the direction away from town. She said it was always there when she got up and always gone by the time she'd finished her coffee, which meant it covered a good distance in a short time, or it turned off somewhere she couldn't see from the window. She said she'd assumed it was someone from one of the farms further out, maybe doing a long morning walk, and that she'd have thought nothing of it except that it walked in the middle of the lane rather than the shoulder, and she'd been meaning to mention it in case I'd nearly hit anyone. I asked her if she'd gotten a good look at it. She said no, it was always too far out, just a shape. I said I'd keep an eye out and drove the rest of the route with both hands on the wheel and the mirror in my peripheral vision the whole time. The figure appeared that day a mile past the Fell place, closer to the start of the route than it had ever been. Day 19 is the one I keep coming back to. I'd been watching the pattern and doing the rough math in my head, and I knew the figure was getting close to the early section of the route, the first few stops out from where I lived. I'd been thinking about what I was going to do when it got there, whether I was going to stop the truck and get out and walk back toward it and see what happened when I moved toward it instead of away, whether that was something I was capable of doing. I was thinking about that on day 19 when I checked the mirror, and it was closer than it had ever been. Not a quarter mile back, maybe 200 yards, close enough that the low, flat light of the morning was enough to see it with more resolution than I had had before. And what I saw with that resolution is the part I've been trying to find a way to describe and keep failing. It wasn't the shape of it that stopped me. The shape was what I'd seen in the mirror for 19 days, upright, roughly proportioned, nothing overtly wrong at that distance. It was the way it was standing, the complete stillness of it, not the stillness of someone who has stopped walking and is resting, the stillness of something that has no need to move right now, because moving isn't currently the point. It was standing in the center of the lane, and the thing that I couldn't unfocus from, the thing that my eyes kept going back to in the mirror, was that it was facing me, not facing the direction I'd come from, facing the direction I was going, facing my back through the rear windshield with a quality I felt rather than saw, a directedness that had nothing passive about it. I pressed the gas and didn't look in the mirror again for the rest of the route. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the notebook and thought about the rate of the progression and the remaining distance to the first stop, which was 4 miles from my house, and then thought about what 4 miles at the current rate meant in terms of days. I came up with 2. I've been trying to think clearly about what I actually know and what I'm inferring and whether the distinction matters at this point. What I know is that something has been appearing in my rearview mirror on my mail route every day for 3 weeks in the same lane, always moving closer to the start of the route and never further away. I know the fells saw it too, which means it isn't something my eyes are producing. I know it didn't appear when Orin was in the car, which means either it's aware of who's in the car or Orin genuinely can't see it for a reason I don't understand. I know that on day 19, it was close enough for me to understand something about the way it faces that I hadn't understood before. What I'm inferring is the part I've been sitting with. I'm inferring that the progression has a destination, that whatever is working its way up the 60 miles of my route, stop by stop, day by day, is working toward something specific, and the something specific is at the end nearest to where I live. I'm inferring this because the progression has been too consistent and too directional to read any other way. It isn't wandering. It's covering ground at a pace that looks like purpose. I've thought about not driving the route, taking a day off, calling in, breaking the pattern. But I took one sick day about 10 days in, the only sick day I've taken in 4 years. And when I drove the route the next morning, the figure was in the same place it had been 2 days before, not a day before. It had waited. It knew I'd missed a day, and it had held its position and picked up again when I came back. Whatever it's tracking isn't the route. It's me on the route. The route is just the mechanism. This morning is day 21. I'm sitting in my truck in my own driveway with the engine running and the heat going and the notebook open on the passenger seat. And I've been sitting here for about 10 minutes doing something I've never done in 4 years of this job, which is not starting the route when I'm supposed to start the route. I'm looking at the rearview mirror. My driveway is about 30 feet long and it opens onto the county road, and I can see maybe a quarter-mile of road in either direction from where I'm sitting. The road is empty. The morning is grey and still, and the fields on the far side of the road are frost-white and flat, and the sky above them is the colour it always is this time of year. I've been checking the notebook math. The figure's average daily progress over the past 3 weeks has been between a quarter-mile and a half-mile, with some days more. The first delivery stop on my route is 4 miles from my house. On day 19, it was close enough that I could see the way it stood. That was 2 days ago, and 2 days of average progress would put it somewhere between the fell place and that first stop, which means it's close, which means this morning, sometime during the route, the mirror is going to show me something closer than it's ever shown me before. I keep coming back to the stillness of it on day 19, the way it was facing me, the complete absence in it of anything that suggested it was uncertain about where it was going or why. I've spent 4 years driving 60 miles of empty road alone, and I've made a kind of peace with all the things that solitude contains, the quiet and the space, and the specific vulnerability of being the only person for a long stretch in any direction. What I haven't made peace with is something that knows my schedule, something that knows which days I work and which days I don't, something that held its position for a full day while I was homesick and picked back up the moment I returned, as if the time I was off the route was simply time it was willing to spend waiting, rather than time it lost ground in. Something that patient has a plan. I don't know what the plan is, but I know what patient means, and I know what the direction of travel means, and I know that 4 miles is not a lot of road. The mirror is empty. I'm going to start driving now, because not driving doesn't change what's on the road behind me. It just means I don't know where it is. And knowing where it is has been the only thing that's felt like an advantage across 3 weeks of this. As long as I can see it in the mirror, I know something about the situation. The day I stop driving the route is the day I stop being able to track it, and that feels worse than any of the alternatives. I'm going to drive the route, and I'm going to check the mirror the way I always do, and I'm going to log whatever I find in the notebook, and I'm going to see where it is this morning. The road is still empty. I'm pulling out now,